When we first start digging into some of the stuff that's over the wire, hopefully here, how many people have used Charles? A good chunk of you. If you haven't, go take a peek at it. It is, I would say, a pretty industry standard tool. You also have your network diagnostic tools in your browsers and so forth, but if you're working on devices as well, which is this is also meant to cover, so we're talking about Fire TV, Apple TV, mobile device and so forth, that's also when these type of things come into play. It's a really good, relatively easy to use tool for monitoring your network traffic and being able to see what's happening, as well as taking it further to allow you to test and force different scenarios to see what happens. So we use Charles a lot when we need to test our kind of stream failover capabilities. So if we have multiple rendition sets within a manifest and we want to make sure that everything's failing over from A to B to C or whatever, oftentimes we'll work with Charles and set up rules within there that we can turn on blacklisting, or we'll test bandwidth fluctuations at an extreme. Charles is a great tool for that. It's relatively cheap as well, pretty robust, and works pretty dang good. There can be some issues on the Linux side on some of the times with it, but normally it works very, very well. It can also be used for, like I mentioned, you can proxy stuff over when you're using things like Fire TV or your mobile devices. Some of them are easier than others to be able to proxy those into your machine, but it's doable, and we're going to talk about some options there. Charles also will open up a HAR file, just in case you guys didn't know that. HAR file, if you have your network diagnostic tools in a browser and you're saving that out, that's normally going to be in a HAR file. It's kind of a relatively open interchange format, and that can be handy. We'll also see a little bit more about that later on. When you need to go deeper on the network, Wireshark. I'm sorry to anyone who's had to use Wireshark a lot. It can be a bit overwhelming. The key thing about working with Wireshark is you see everything going over the network, not just your normal HTTP, HTTPS, TCP-based traffic. The key thing, if you ever have to work with Wireshark, is get a grasp on the filters. The bare minimum, HTTP and TCP, put that in there. That will be helpful. That will at least narrow down, from the fire hydrant to a fire hose. There's still room for growth in there, and it really comes down to using those filters appropriately to dig stuff out. Ultimately, though, with either of these type of tools or your network tools in general, the idea is that you're trying to, when you're working on a major, like a live event specifically, or even if it's on-demand content, the base level thing is you're looking for things other than 200s, right? So 400, 500s, those are your HTTP status codes that indicate that something's failing, that it didn't get delivered. Generally, most of these tools make these things in red in some way, so you can see them a little bit quicker. Identify those, and then you can kind of work your way back from there as to, okay, why is this happening, and who do I need to call and yell at? Couple little hidden gems. Anyone here doing stuff on Fire TV? My man. There's one of you. So this is a good slide for you. If you don't know about this, there are some hidden dev tools on Fire TV. A little key combination or a command line, you can open those up. And it actually allows you then to be able to set proxy, so it makes it very easy to send that traffic through to your personal machine so you can network monitor it, as well as it shows you things like your CPU usage, your memory usage, and so forth. It lets you overlay this stuff on top of your whole Fire TV device. Really, really handy. And it's super valuable. Also shows you your network throughput and so forth. It's one of these things that I get surprised that it's not always well known, but is super, once you know it, you're never going to forget it. For Apple TV, that can be a little bit harder sometimes to proxy. There's a little bit of information in here. Don't worry, I have a link at the end here. You can go and you request, you can say which slides you want. I'm also going to give you guys access to some betas that we have for some of our private tools and so forth. So when it comes to links and so forth, you'll be able to get all this stuff later on if you want to. Working with Apple TV can be a bit harder to proxy at times, but it's still doable. One of our challenges, though, is that whenever we're working with any customers, the first thing when we start seeing problems is like, well, did you get a network log? Can we see it? Can you send that over to us? And those of you guys who worked with Charles, you can know, especially working streaming video, these can be logs that get very large very fast at one point, and sharing them can be difficult, as well as, honestly, if you want to be able to do this proxying oftentimes, especially on some of the Apple devices, to go to yours, you end up having to actually use like a Mac to be able to do that. Become very expensive overall to start having a bunch of these proxy devices. We have been working on these little guys. So we have a bunch of these Raspberry Pis, and we set up this distributed tool called Mocap. And we can just plug these in with a network cable, and these show up as a wireless access point. We hook up we say, okay, great, for my internet on my device or whatever I want, just use this as my access point. And it allows us to monitor and get logs very, very quickly and easily. And we can then save those logs even out to HAR file and then share those. But the cool thing as well with this is that you can actually, we have one of these, we have 5 of these in our office right now, and we set up by organization. We can, even from here, and I'm going to show you guys in a minute, I can go and actually look at the live network log going on at a streaming device in my office and be able to save and pull that out here. So I can give these to our customers and say, hey guys, hey, listen, we want to do some testing with you guys. You're in a separate network, even if it's behind VPN and so forth. If you can set up one of these guys and use this as your access point for the devices that you want to test on, we can do this collaboratively with you and see that network traffic coming through. And it's really, really handy. So here's a couple screenshots showing it. Ultimately, you can just view stuff randomly, but you can start saving your captures. When you save them, you can either convert them to HAR if they haven't been, or download a HAR if they have. Once you start creating a session, you give it a name, and it'll date it. And then you can see a GUI to go in here and actually be able to start working with it. Once it's done, you can come back, say, OK, stop capturing, and then you can convert it. I actually, like I said, had one of my people kick on one of the devices beforehand. So here, you can see these are all the devices that we currently have in this group. There's 4 that are online, 2 that aren't. I'm on Pi 19. But here I can just go ahead and let's take a look and see if this thing is still actually running and capturing traffic. So the nice thing with this is I'm able to actually monitor network log for devices in a separate location, relatively real time. It's pulling in the data right now. Since this thing has been running for a while, it can take a little bit. There we go. And scroll down, we can see new data coming in. And this is it streaming out content as we go right now. And I can click on any of these. I can see the response. I can get the same type of data. I could download this as a HAR file for an individual response right now. Or I can create and download the whole session that's been recording now for an hour plus from our dashboard. So you can see here this new test is currently capturing, and it keeps going until I want to stop it. So this is something that we've had a lot of fun building, and it's really cool because it's all distributed, but it gives a good route for working with these type of network captures. We're just opening up a private beta on some of this stuff too, so if you guys want to start playing with some of the devices, you can let me know. Like I said, there'll be a forum in the end, and you can play around with those too.